So you recently shot a film and you're looking for something that could take things to the next level. Or you recently watched a film and you absolutely fell in love with how the grading of that thing looked. And you ended up wondering how to get that look from. And you keep obsessing and imagining and daydreaming about getting the same look to one of your video works yourself, then I'm here to help you. In my small to mid-scale videography career, I have been struggling with the same problem for a very long time. Today, we are talking about a plugin that's going to change your life. You're right, most of it might already know, and that's probably the reason why you clicked on this video. It is Dehancer. And I've been playing around with Dehancer for the past 7 to 8 days, and I myself created a short cinematic sequence out of it. So in today's video, I'm going to give a walkthrough of my whole editing journey and the learning curve involved while working with Dehancer. This video is specifically targeted at those people who are on their initial stages of learning journey in color grading, and honestly, I don't consider myself a big expert either. I feel like intermediate to advanced level people might also benefit from it. So stick with me till the end. Along with the walkthrough, I'm going to give a brief description about the tool itself and how to use each and every feature of the plugin, what I like to call a tried and tested approach, which I came up with by using a lot of the recommendations related to how to use Dehancer, what picture profile, what camera stock to use, what's a good way to use other functionalities like film compression, Halation and Bloom, understanding of how you can yourself basically go crazy with the plugin itself and use Dehancer to its full potential and unlock some very unique looks. So without further ado, let's get started.
I'm happy on my own, making coffee just for one, and eating breakfast all alone. Fewer dishes to be done. Swear I'm happy on my own. No one to worry where I am, or waiting for me to come home. Staying up till 3 a.m. I'm always out on the town, and when our song comes on, I just hum along and order another round.
So the short cinematic sequence which you just saw is what I created within the past 2-3 days, and I'm fairly new to Dehancer. I didn't know much about it. All I did was watch a bunch of YouTube videos and read their documentation. And anyone who's starting off, I highly recommend you go to their website and download the manual, because it is going to help and clarify a lot of confusions. I will try my level best to summarize all the information that I have learned on YouTube. All thanks to all the other creators out there. This community is amazing and people are really very transparent in trying to help each other out. Also, full disclosure, I am not being paid by Dehancer to make this video. However, in all honesty, I did collaborate with them on this video. So there are some pros which I will highlight in this video, as well as some cons of using the plugin. And all of those opinions are my own, and Dehancer has been very welcoming of criticism as well. So I'll make sure to include some of those criticisms as well. If you would like to give Dehancer a try, you can use my promo code to get some additional discounts while purchasing the plugin. And all of that is mentioned in the description below. Again, let me reiterate, I'm not getting paid by Dehancer. However, if you end up using my link, I will get a very small commission from it. So that will really help in supporting a small creator like me. So without further ado, let's go. So here I am in my timeline, and these are actually the real clips from the short film which I shot recently and I uploaded on my channel. You can check that out. It should show up somewhere at the top of your screen right now. I will walk you through on how I ended up achieving that cinematic look. So I just dragged in a few of the clips. One of them is my own, where I put a tripod on the streets of Amsterdam and I shot myself along with the canal in front. A few of the clips are from my friend Marta, who happily volunteered to help me with this shoot. So thanks a lot, Marta, for joining the shoot. So the reason why I have these different clips here is because I want to create a look which I want to basically run through the entire different kinds of landscapes and the different setups and sceneries and lighting conditions which I shot that day. And all of these clips are basically shot in a matter of couple of hours within a single day. It was a rather very windy, gloomy, rainy kind of a weather in Amsterdam that day. And those of you who've been to Amsterdam, they would know that's like very typical of that city. So anyway, so let's see if we can add a little bit of characteristics, drama, an element of interest, and make these clips pop with Dehancer. So to begin with the tried and tested method, first thing you have to do is, so I would personally have all my effects separated out in a different adjustment clip. It's a nice way of organizing the timeline and it keeps things different. I can apply the same adjustment clip to some other clips and so on. I don't personally like to have my color effects tightly coupled to the clips. Let's go to the color section, and I have seen a lot of people have different opinions over here. So the best approach that has worked for me is actually to have a 3-node setup here. But let me tell you, you can get the same look, or to some extent a similar look, with even a single node. For now, just stick with me, bear with me, and follow this as I create 3 different nodes and I label them for the sake of simplicity and understanding. So the second node is the one I'm labeling as Dehancer, and the first node will be a color space transform, and the third node as well be a color space transform. Okay. So to begin with, I used a Sony mirrorless camera. The profile I had on that was HLG3. For my case, HLG3 is basically nothing but a kind of a Rec 709. The transform which I'm doing here will be selecting what my input is. And for HLG, it is Rec 709, Rec 2100 HLG. Now I'm going to transform this into just the intermediate color space. I have the output as DaVinci white gamut, which becomes the input for Dehancer. So when I go to the Dehancer tab, if you followed all the installation instructions, you will find Dehancer here mentioned. Just drag and drop into the second node, which we named as Dehancer. It's going to look shit in the beginning. Don't worry about that. We will cover each and every of these features one by one and we'll make this look gorgeous. While you are still on the second node, which is Dehancer, you should go and change this to DaVinci Intermediate, because this is what was the input, remember? And finally, we go to the third node, which is color space transform again, and we follow the same method. The input will be DaVinci Intermediate. We want the output to be Rec 709, and we want a Gamma 2.4. Trust me, things are going to get really smooth and really easy from now on. Now we go to our favorite part, which is the plugin itself. Okay, so while I'm here at the Dehancer node, you will find an avalanche of different options here. Some of them are might be enabled, some of them might not be enabled, and you can keep scrolling through and you can keep getting overwhelmed and trying to be in that confusion and anxious state as to what is going on. So the first step which I recommend you is that you shrink all these options altogether. And if you're using Mac, you can do so by clicking the option along with the mouse click button in any of those, and all of these should simply just collapse. In input, we did all the right things needed. For now, we can actually play around with these settings a little bit if you like. Personally, I think I don't need anything at the moment. Probably later there might be some minor nitpicks which I might have in over here. I can just leave this section as it is, but just to let you know, there are some basic corrections here, basic adjustments, like you can change the temperature, add a little bit of tint, which is greens, or a little bit of purples, add a little bit of fringings. Again, no absolute requirement. I would say just let things be the way they are, and if you're happy with that, we can go to the very next step. So the next thing, we will begin with Vignette. If you are aware of what color grading is, you would already by now know what Vignette stands for, and I would just add a little bit of Vignette. Personally, I think I'm more or less happy with what we have in Vignette so far. We can move on. The next thing is the film profile. I had that selected, I think, from the last usage, but this option itself, if you're using Dehancer for the first time, I would say this is one of the most powerful features of this tool, and this is actually the essence of the whole plugin. In profile section, you will find countless options of different film camera profile looks to choose from. The sad part is actually you cannot preview each one of them as you hover through. So that's kind of one pain point which I found while using Dehancer, and this is the place where I would recommend you spend hours and hours. Make sure this is enabled and keep playing with the different kind of looks of different film cameras and see which one suits you the best. I would keep it at the Kodak Vision 3 250D. Under the film section, you also have something called a push and pull. What it does is, while retaining the same film profile, it adjusts different levels of exposures in the image. I think for me, this personally is okay. The next step I would recommend is going to expand, which basically provides some settings related to black and white point adjustments for your image. So if you go through Dehancer's documentation, they also recommend adjusting the expand tool as soon as you change your film profile. So let's quickly jump into that, and so let me adjust the whites. And if you see on my screen in the colors parade section, I'm trying to bring more details into the picture. So next up is the print settings, which is also one of my favorite settings to tweak in Dehancer, and this basically represents the kind of paper being used to print the film on. If you've been looking at reviews and tutorials of Dehancer online, chances are you already by now know that the Kodak 2383 print film is preferred choice in the market, and I am absolutely obsessed with the kind of look it creates. So for this particular project, I think I'm not going to reinvent any wheels here, and I'm just going to prefer the safer choice. However, again, you are free to look into all the different details all the different options you have for the print films to choose from. The kind of vibe which glossy paper gives, I already have that in mind for another project which is ongoing. So yeah, next time, but for now I'll just stick to the 2383. You can change the settings here and adjustments, a little bit of less contrast, exposure settings on the paper, target whites, and so on. So if you're actually going for the film look, what I do recommend is that you tick the analog range limiter. Actually normalizes the highlights and saturation in a very nice analog camera range. So another pro tip for you there. So next up is the setting called Film Developer Tools. So once you've shot the film in the desired settings, you've selected the choice of paper to print the film on. The next thing that comes is how you choose to develop that film. You get a bit of options to change the look and the style of your image here, especially like the fact that they have a gamma correction here. You have the option to control your midtones, and you can make them shift towards shadows or highlights. And of course, the color boost here, because so far our image looks very washed out. I will go all the way in as much as possible and add a little bit of color, because in reality, back in those days when film used to be produced, all these colors used to get filled in during this process. So let's talk about the next tool, which is film compression. And for a lot of colorists, film compression is one of those features that they absolutely drool over. This provides you a really nice control over your highlights in the image. Initially, when I had this disabled, my highlights were too white. It's as if I had an ND filter on my camera, and it really helps to bring out that film look in your footage. Next up will be the color head, and as the name suggests, it has something to do with the colors, and you can play around with it, give an overall color kind of a tint to your image, which is what the top 3 options provide you. Or you can actually opt in moving all these 3 settings together at once, like as the name suggests, like a whole gang towards one direction or the other. So if you're a beginner at color grading, I personally would recommend you to be super careful while using this choice and not overdo this, because it can mess up with the look. Considering this is also my first Dehancer projects, and the possibilities which Colorhead provides are honestly endless, I would keep that exploration for some time in the future. So next is film grain. The name is self-explanatory. There are different film camera profiles for you to choose from to get the desired film grain. As a rule of thumb, I would say the smaller the millimeters here, the less detailed and more grainy it would be, because in theory, an 8mm film camera is using a reel of width 8mm. So if you select an 8mm grain, as you keep on dialing in the film grain and going way all the way to the right, it's going to get less and less detailed because the film dimensions itself were too small for an 8mm camera. However, if I keep it on 100 and I select a wider film width camera like the 16mm, it will become slightly more detailed. If you want to be safe, I would recommend choosing the 35mm 50 because I don't want the ISO noise also showing up in my footage, and just a slight bit of grains which would be visible in the final export. Next up is my favorite part of Dehancer, and this is the part which made me go like, Dehancer, here's $1 million, just take it. Every single person in this community absolutely loves it. It is the Halation and Bloom. These are basically light emulsion effects, and the reason why I specifically chose this image is because even though there's daylight, it also has a light source around it. As soon as I enable this feature, you'll see the massive difference it creates to the footage. Do you see all these halos around the light source? That's what halation is about. I can keep doing this all day, trust me. And this is the very essence of getting that film look. The more you use it, the more you'll realize and fall in love with it. Because I really love it and I actually want to go creative with it, I would choose a really high value for Halation. Both Halation and Bloom provide you the option to customize each and every detail if you like. And the more you keep using Dehancer, the more proficient you'll become, and that's the stage where I recommend you to go to the settings, choose custom, and play around with all of these because these can actually help you get that unique look. So there's a lot of potential and a lot of power the Halation feature itself comes with. I recommend checking that out. I also recommend not going overboard if you're going for a very realistic look. To give you a bit of understanding what Bloom does, it basically disperses light around objects. Think of angels and ghosts and how they're portrayed in the films with all those shiny borders around them. So that's what Bloom is about. I would actually go crazy with Bloom as well in this look. Would go for a pretty high value. There you go. Next up is the film damage. If you've seen all the old films like Recall Charlie Chaplin Days, you would notice that there are dusts or hair scratches, some tear marks that show up as the film keeps rolling. Film damage feature helps you achieve that. So if I enable that and if you keep a good eye on the footage, laptop is good enough to render these effects for you. You see these black spots coming in the footage, like here. That's basically what film damage does. Personally, for my current project, I'm more than happy with the film grain and I don't want to go in the film damage look yet, so I'll keep it disabled. Next up is film breadth and gate weave. Both of these are fairly recent additions to Dehancer, and they also help in achieving a very vintage kind of a look. Film breadth makes your footage appear as if the film is breathing. There are these occasional changes in exposure or contrast, and it feels as if it's trying to replicate that actual vintage film look. Same goes for gate weave actually, which stands for the mechanical swinging of a film strip, as if it's being pulled in a projector screen. If you are into that vintage look, film look, I recommend just playing around with it a little bit. And of course, both these features also come in with the customization option, so you can choose to go all the way hardcore and advanced with it. Create your own film breadth or a gate weave look. I would just keep them disabled for my first project. Overscan, which is again Dehancer's way of giving us with some creative looks around for the image. You can consider them overlays over your existing film footage to make it more like a physical film. I mean, I would say it's not bad, but I definitely don't want to use this in all my projects, maybe one or two. But these are really cool and I really appreciate Dehancer for providing with all these features. All in all, I kind of have the kind of look which I want, but I'm still not very happy with it. So I'll keep going in, keep tweaking different parameters and different settings until I achieve the final look. This is the point where I also recommend you, after following the right sequence of setting changes, if you're not happy with any of the settings, just go back and tweak the different settings a little bit until you're happy too. After spending a good amount of 10 to 15 minutes on the changes which I initially made, I think I'm really happy with the look I created. Let me know what you think. So we did some basic edits, played around with Dehancer. I personally spent a good amount of 7 days trying to understand all the capabilities of Dehancer. You don't actually have to do that much. I feel there's a lot to unpack here in Dehancer, and they're trying to provide a lot of features and functionalities in a small package, which does come at a price point. I would definitely admit that, but it's definitely super capable and super useful if you are into filmmaking or color grading your footage. So I think at this point, let's talk about the pros and cons of Dehancer. So number one, doesn't matter if you are a beginner or an intermediate or an advanced person, Dehancer is for everyone. I personally consider myself a beginner in this. This is not my full-time job. I don't do this for a living yet. But YouTube is my school, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about filmmaking and color grading. And no exaggeration there, discovering Dehancer was a life-changing event for me. For the longest time, I have been in the category of people who have sweated too much trying to understand why I'm not able to get that look. Years later, I discovered the whole concept of film look, or the picture profiles which comes in the camera. What is log, what is S-log, what is D-log, what is H-log, and the whole concepts of LUTs came in a few years later. And for the longest time, I did honestly try a lot of LUTs. The amateur kid that I was, I didn't even realize the whole concept of colors and how that works, why a particular LUT is not working to the expectations that I had with it, and all of those things around it, because it depends a lot on the picture profile you shoot your footage in. It depends on the camera you're using, whether or not that LUT is suitable for it. It depends on whether you're doing any color transforms on it or not, and so on, so on, so on. In order to really get that consistent look, and if you're also an amateur or an advanced vlogger, using the right color transformation in the CST nodes, which I mentioned, you can actually manage to get a very consistent look across your device. So I think pro, I would say, for Dehancer is the diverse features and functionalities. You don't have to be an advanced user. You don't have to go to every setting and choose the custom tab. It's a lot of features and it's a little overwhelming, but they've made it as easy as possible for you to access all the features of the film look and try to get that. It's a powerhouse of features, actually. Provided that you can afford their license, I would say it's not a bad deal because they have an option of lifetime subscription. So I think all in all, it's not a bad deal, honestly. Number three is actually related to the magic features, which is film compression, Halation and Bloom, which I absolutely love. And I never in my life imagined that I would have access to creating such looks. And this is something, again, which if you buy LUTs from the marketplace, you don't really get that flexibility to come up with that creative look in your footage. So I really appreciate Dehancer for all the color science, all the tech that goes into this and making this work. Okay, next pro, really quick. I would say the endless possibilities. There are just literally countless film profiles to choose from, and on top of that, each and every feature is there's a possibility of customizing that. That means it just gives you literally infinite possibilities of different kinds of looks, which you can keep creating with Dehancer. So those were my pros. Now it's time for cons. And evidently, one of the biggest things which I feel as a pain point while using the plugin was the fact that it is, for a new user, it can be very overwhelming. There's just this overload of information and all these drop downs. They just make the user really, really overwhelmed with information, and there's no real guidance. And if you're someone like me who is really literally impatient at just jumping hands-on while trying something new, you would probably skip going through the README or the manual, which points you in the right direction in the sense that it tells you what features, what tools you should be switching or tweaking first. I would say the way Dehancer can improve here is, if possible, I'm not sure if it's technically possible or not, but if possible, they can actually give a tooltip here with a description of what that tool is about. It should also include a link to the documentation and prompt the user further to go to the documentation and try to understand the right sequence of things. And for that matter, I think Dehancer, you can also try to resequence the settings in the more logical way. There must be already a good reason to sequence things the way that they are right now, but even as it's mentioned in the official doc, also in the official video uploaded on your channel, the right sequence in which the different features need to be changed and tweaked is kind of different than the sequence of these settings as seen in the plugin. Next thing I don't like about Dehancer is actually the undo feature. I don't know what it is, but let's say if I change my exposure, my temperature, tint, defringe, and I do undo, you notice something? All of those settings literally went back to where they were. I kind of don't understand. This is a big pain point for me, especially during my editing journey wherein I really wanted to just undo the last setting that I changed, but Dehancer ended up undoing literally everything else which I did a while ago. The tech team in Dehancer, if you can actually fix that, that might save the editors a lot of pain in the ass, and that will be great. Another con, doing a little bit of nitpicking here, because all in all, it's really difficult to find any limitations in the tool really, but with the objective of improving Dehancer and making it easier to use for everyone. Another scope of improvement which I find here is the fact there's a lot of misclicks which happen with me while scrolling through the whole settings. So let's say I am right over here in halation. I just change the halation values. Now I have to go all the way up to the film profile section. What I'll do, I literally just change the settings. I will scroll the settings up. If I try to use my two-finger gesture on the Mac and try to scroll up while here, instead of scrolling up to the top of the options, it scrolls up in that setting region. Sometimes there were some accidental scrolls and I ended up messing with my settings which I had, and I had to struggle with going back to the original state and getting that look which I had initially. This bug with the previous one combined, if I scroll and I change a setting and I press Command Z for undo, it will just, what Dehancer does is it just undoes a bunch of other stuff which I deliberately changed and I did not want to undo. So these are a few nitpicks which I would have from you. It would be great if we can fix all that and make Dehancer an even better product for the people to use. So human mind is actually capable of recognizing things visually far more quicker than it can do textually. What I feel could help bump up my efficiency personally while using Dehancer would be to have some sort of mini logos on the right side representing all these different tools here. So there might be a film developer logo on the right and a film compression logo on the right, and expand. Basic, it doesn't have to be something fancy, but probably for expand there can be a plus with a magnifying glass. For print there can be a printer and so on, and this actually will help segregate things in my head and also navigate to the right feature quicker. Hope I brought some value. I'm not a professional color grader myself. I'm just starting off literally. I just try to give all honest opinions. There are things I know. There are a lot of things which I still don't know and I am yet to learn. But this was my insight on how I color graded my last video and how I ended up achieving that look. Hope you like it. Do check out Dehancer if you plan on buying. I do recommend clicking on the link in the description below because that might give you a little bit of discount and would save you a couple of bucks. And thanks a lot for watching. Have a good day.